What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS.
Established over 100 years ago, Watkins Books is one of the world's oldest and leading independent bookshops specializing in esoterica. We have the widest selection of esoteric books in the UK, and our friendly and knowledgeable staff are here to assist you in a unique ambience of our shop. So come and visit us in the heart of London as we're open every day.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting from the UK and across the world online. You're now watching the UK's only alternative late-night talk show, and I'm your host, Kevin Moore. For the next hour, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On today's show, I'm joined with Maureen McGill, who is an Associate Professor of Theatre and Dance at Pacific Lutheran University in Washington, where for over 38 years she's taught courses in dance, movement, choreography, and continues now teaching in the areas of healing arts of mind, body, and spirit. Maureen's keen interest in the intuitive arts has expanded her curiosity to the spiritual side of life. Morin is a featured reader of tarot in the Pacific Northwest and appears at intuitive arts fairs in the Seattle region, and is a frequent guest on local and international radio networks. Her work has opened up doors using symbols and metaphors to help those find light in the midst of loss and grief. She states it's a positive experience to share in the healing message of the tarot. Maureen joins us today to discuss her latest book, Baby It's You, Messages from Deceased Heroes. Maureen McGrill, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on, Kevin. It's Maureen McGill, the author of Baby It's You, Messages from Deceased Heroes.
Absolutely. Now, I do like the cover of your book, and we're just going to put that cover on screen now. I mean, I've got the book in the studio, but it's always nice to see it on screen, on full screen. A very interesting book, and I know that I've been trying to get you on for some time, and I'm glad that we've been able to touch base today to do this. I'd like to know a bit about yourself first, as well, if that's okay. What is your obviously in the intro we've talked about your day job as working at PLU in Washington. Are you still at that university?
I'm just on retirement now. It's something called phased retirement, and I'm teaching only one course at the university called Healing Arts of Mind and Body. We explore different healing modalities, energy medicine, and a little bit on this intuition and after-death communication. We talk about that in the course as well.
How would you get that in a course at university?
Well, it's alternative healing. And there are so many energy-based medicines, Reiki, hands-on healing or healing touch, movement-based oriented therapies. And we talk about those. We work through them. We do some yoga. We do some balancing of the left and right side of the body and left and right hemispheres of the brain.
And how long does that course run at the uni?
So actually, that's a 1-month course at the university. So the students at Pacific Lutheran University can choose one course in the month of January to explore. And in my new adventure now with phased retirement, I'm teaching just the one course, which is pretty exciting. I've been a dance professor for 38 years and directed a dance ensemble. And I kind of always believe that this awareness extends beyond the body. And that's how I got interested in the healing arts, healing modalities. And then, of course, after-death communication.
Yes. What was any sort of spiritual background prior to this awakening that you had? I mean, who was you prior to really getting into this work?
I started investigating the International Association of Near-Death Studies. And that's an international organization where they study near-death experiences, where people flatline, they go over, and then they come back. Or they sometimes refer them as woo-woo experiences, which might be a kind of energetic experience that someone might have. I became very interested in that organization, and I became a member in Seattle of the Seattle chapter of what they call IONS as the abbreviation for it. And now I'm on the board for the Seattle IONS, and I think it's a remarkable grief group. It's a great group for people to explore their near-death experiences and talk about them and get feedback and find out how similar they are to other people's experiences.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. No, I've heard of these people, this group before. Okay, so yeah, well, they're still going, obviously, and it's an organization that's international.
That's right. They can go to IANDS.org, International Association of Near-Death Studies.org, and they'll see their website. They have a big conference, international conference, coming up in Orlando, Disneyland area here in the United States, and that's coming up in July. They have some great speakers lined up and wonderful speakers that talk about near-death experiences and do research, and they blend the spirituality and the science, so it's pretty cool.
Oh, we might speak about that off air. Okay, that's very, very interesting. Okay, so was there any sort of spiritual texts as well, sort of spiritual books that was a big influence to you?
Oh, that's a good question. Probably the autobiography of a yogi. Yogananda, of course, was really influential. But I became interested in those researchers and the near-death experiences, including Raymond Moody, Dr. Melvin Morse. And other researchers in the past.
Big names, absolutely. Okay, but then what led into tarot? How did you get into using the tarot?
Kevin, I was interested in the tarot because once a year I would have my astrological chart read with my birthday and to look at the different planets and what would be the perspectives of that particular year. And the teacher that I went to for the tarot and for astrology, her name is Arlene Tognetti, and she's published probably 9 books on the tarot and astrology, and she's a teacher in the work. She looked at my chart one year and she said, Maureen, you should be studying this. So I decided to use the tool of the tarot and take classes and dive in, and so the rest is history. I've been doing it now for about 16 years. It's taken off.
Okay.
I've been on lots of radio and international radio networks, as well as I'm doing it professionally in the Northwest, here in the Northwest.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, I think that was in the introduction as well. Absolutely. So let me get this right. Do you use it as a tool?
I do use it as a tool. I never believe that any reader gives anybody the true answers. It's like you have free will, but the tarot certainly guides us. It guides us for healing. It guides us in metaphors and symbols and healing, and gives us some new perspectives, maybe, and looks at time, sometimes past, present, and future as well.
Yeah, it's never the actual picture in the sense of this is the defining thing that's going to happen, because I think with all of this, there's free will, which always plays a part. And I think this tool is a way to reach your higher self, a way to reach the client's best part of them, the God part in a sense. And I think that part, let's just call it the higher self for now, would is never going to manifest into this reality as we are. It's not there for that. Otherwise, the game's up. I think it's there to give loving indications of what may be pathways open to people, and the sort of I guess ideas of potentials which could be good if you took them. Do you know what I mean?
That's right.
But yeah, as you say, to say it's defining this, no reader can do that, but they can get into tune of what could be best for you.
Very good. And I think you're right about the, in the message of love, because we're all connected in that vibration of love. The near-death experiencers talk about that. And I do believe that the messages in the tarot and the metaphors and the symbols are simply about that love connection that connects us all in that one place of divine.
Yes. I know a lot of psychic readers who use the cards, but they're not actually really getting much information of the card. It's the card seems to be there as a guiding help for them to bring through the information. It's not what it seems sometimes.
It's just a tool. And sometimes people use tea leaves. I've seen it at an intuitive arts fair recently where somebody takes chocolate and drops the chocolate onto the table and then uses that as the symbol. Or maybe they look at the hand as the symbol. There's a history, of course, with the hand and reading the palms, for people. So it's a tool, just a different tool.
Yeah, and even dreams are a tool for ourselves. Our intuitive instinct, our intuitive knowing is our higher self talking to us. This higher self talks to us as much as it can do, but it's do we listen sometimes?
That's the key. And it's kind of being able to separate those dreams from the knowingness. Are those dreams really real, like supposedly a visitation that someone might have from the other side? And there's usually a real distinction for the people receiving the dream, that they sense that it's so real. The skin on their body has, chills, or the hair on their arm stands up, or there's a physical sensation that's kind of different when you have a dream that's maybe perhaps a visitation dream.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so you've got this gift, and okay, so well, let's just explore your gift then a bit more. So you've got the card, you're using the cards in a sense, but how does it feel that the information comes to you? Is it through just a knowing that comes to you, like a download? Is there a voice on the right side of your head? Is it a mixture of things?
Kevin, it's just a download. I just look at the symbol and the words are there. I can't really describe it. I can't really give you the science. Hey, it's a picture or it's a voice. I can't say it's that. No, it's just simply a knowingness.
That must be like a 360 shift for you from the person that you was. How has your family received you doing this?
I have two wonderful brothers, and they're both just open to it, and they're supportive. They're just loving brothers, and they don't ask me a lot about it, but they're very supportive in the two books that I've written, and they've been my best agents on the books, so I can't thank them enough for that.
That's good. That's really, really good. I'm pleased for you that you've got that, because for some people it's not always so simple as that. But that's nice, and maybe in this life that's just the way it's meant to be for you as well, which is great. Does it make it any easier still, even with all that support? I bet there's times when you question it.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, Kevin, it's not always the answer. And I think when people ask so many questions, they want to know, when is he going to show up in my life? When is she going to marry me? When, or why? It's always about love or money. Those are the two top questions, as you know, as I'm sure you know all about that.
And the hardest part of all that is, yes, of course you want to help, and you do help. You will give your input from what's coming through, but really, guys, it's down to you to make those bigger decisions. I know it's scary. I'm going through the same thing right now a little bit, and it's tough sometimes to really to listen to your intuitive side. It is a tough process because it's much responsibility comes from that.
There is much responsibility, but I always say that, just begin simple, just trusting your gut about certain situations. People who are really great in business really have to trust their intuition. If they're really good as a doctor, as a physician, they need to know their science, of course, but they also need to trust their gut and their intuition. I tell my students at the university, when you walk into a party and you're talking to someone, and that person is talking, that is the person behind you is looking at you, and all of a sudden you turn around and that person's looking right at you. But you were facing a different direction. So how did you know that person was looking at you? But you sensed it. There was a sense, and it's that sense that extends beyond the body that we don't always acknowledge in our education patterns or in learning, but it's such a part of this world right now. I think people really need to trust their intuition about situations, places, people.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. And when, just go, we're going to get into the book, don't worry, but just, the final question on this, when you're not too sure what your gut's telling you, and you're not too sure, is it saying this or the other, or I can't really hear it, I don't think, or I'm not trusting to hear it, what should you do in that moment?
So you know what? Practice, practice, practice. You just write it down. Is that what you mean? Like when you're starting the tarot or you're starting to do readings, you just have to try it. You just have to practice. And it's not going to be 100%. And it's not going to be 90% in the beginning. But then all of a sudden, it starts to click. And that awareness and knowingness, you just know that it's right.
And I could add this to it as well. Even if you're not too sure what it's saying, or you've gone along and you've thought it said this, right? You've thought it said that because that's what you've gone along with it, and you think it's it could be telling me it's okay. No matter really what decision you make, it will always be the right decision because the eventual outcome will always be the right thing, no matter what.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Right, baby, it's you. How did you come to write this book? I'm mystified about the process what started this book off.
Well, first of all, I wrote another book with another person. Her name is Nola Davis, and together we wrote a book called Live from the Other Side. And those were messages from loved ones from the other side. And we worked a little bit with the philosophy about those messages, and we collected true stories. And when we finished that project together, I looked at her and I said, you know what? I got another book here. And I think I'm going to focus on messages from deceased heroes. Where that came from, I don't know. But in my choreography, in the last about 15 years, I've had a theme going where all of a sudden I'll do a dance about veterans or about military or about loss of life, or there's something connected to Vietnam or something in my work, in my creative work, that was exploring this whole level of grief and loss and the war. So perhaps maybe that just came through. Who knows if I had a past life that wasn't resolved? I don't know. But anyway, it was right there, this idea of doing that. I looked at her and I said, I don't think it's going to work to sit side by side the second time around. And we both agreed because she has a very intense career and I had an intense career. So it was difficult to be able to, with families, to be able to sit down and do that. So I moved forward with Baby It's You. And my publisher, Ozark Mountain Publishing, took the risk of this little book. And I'm so excited. It's come out with a great cover. And the cover of the book, and I don't know if you have it there, has this big transistor radio on it, which I think is a great metaphor for the book itself. Every story in the book is connected to a song, which was their song. And you know how you have a song in a relationship that's kind of your song? Well, that's the songs that carry through in the book. So I love that about the book, and I love that about the cover and what Ozark did to design that. I kind of say that the song titles confirm that's the way love goes. We are together again and at last. Those are famous songs, and those are, of course, in the book as well.
Right. So how did you? So let me get this right. Let's still try. I'm still trying to understand the process here. So the stories in here, you got in contact with people that had lost someone, or they got in contact with you. These clients that had lost someone from as you say. Trying to find the words here. Can't find the words. As someone that had lost someone as a veteran.
That's right. They had some connection to military service. So many of the stories are from widows, young widows who have lost their loved ones in war. There's some stories from the mothers of soldiers. There's a few stories from 9/11, a couple of stories from 9/11, and those are from the families. And then there's also stories from 3 surviving heroes as well that are military, but they are military connected.
Right. And how did you get in contact with them?
Kevin, it was just sort of happened. Well, I put the word out in social media that I was doing the book, and one widow kind of told another widow, and then it kind of took off. And then there were some connections through the International Association of Near-Death Studies of some people who've had near-death experiences, and they said, we would like to be a part of this. We have a story, blah, blah, blah. And that's kind of how it started.
Right. Okay, that makes sense now. Right. Wow. It was just this. It was a roller coaster ride, then, in a sense.
It really was. It just was beautiful the way that one door opened to the next, especially in terms of these widows. And I might read for you something that's quite beautiful in the beginning of the book, if you're ready to kind of hear that.
Yep. Almost. Just sorry, I've got to ask this as well, right? Now, when these stories are from the widows, right? You didn't do any sort of tarot reading with them to bring this forth. This wasn't channeled or anything. This is just their stories.
Absolutely, it's their stories, and there wasn't any tarot done whatsoever. I might have given them a reading after they've described their story, but no, these are true experiences of visitations that they received from their loved ones that had died either in war or accidents, stateside accidents, or suicide, or 9/11, as I said.
Okay, well, I'll pass the floor to you. Thank you for just clearing that up.
Sure. So many of the stories in the book talk about how these young couples met. And they were so young, Kevin. I mean, like 16, 17 when they met, and usually just a few months later that they got married. So I wrote this poem because I kind of thought it was like Romeo and Juliet. And there used to be a song, there is a song by the Reflections called Just Like Romeo and Juliet. And the poem starts out, all right, now I'm speculating, wonder what tomorrow's really going to bring. And that's from the Reflections, that wonderful song called Romeo and Juliet, just like Romeo and Juliet. So anyway, we met in the laundry room in college. He carried my underwear to the dorm room. In high school at a wrestling tournament, through my cousin, at Walmart where we worked, at a country bar on a Thursday night, at a nightclub on the dance floor, at a costume party with mask and a hat. On Instant Messenger, I was 17 and he was 19. Through his best friend Jeremy, in grade school when we played on the playground, on Facebook, and we were married after 1 month of dating at the pawn shop, on a blind date, on New Year's Eve, in the convertible when I stopped for a red light and he pulled up right next to me, at Burger King where we worked at age 16, on a website called Hot or Not where we exchanged photos, when he was a football player and I was a cheerleader. But now we meet in my dreams, in the hallway when I smell him, in bed when I feel his skin touch mine, when I see his silhouette, his shoulders, his head, and how he held his arms out like he was holding a blanket. When the song comes on the radio, at the restaurant, at church, or in the elevator. When I find pennies on the ground or in the weirdest places. When the basketball bounces on the court and no one's there. When I see him staring at me from the waist up when I'm in bed. When I find the Dutch key ring in the middle of the desert from him. When I meet the police officer who's wearing your memory bracelet. When I hear your voice saying, my son. When the kids see you standing in uniform on the porch. And when I find the heart-shaped sticker on a leaf. When the digital frame stops for no reason at your photo. When he comes to me in my dream with a message. When I hear his voice singing his favorite song. Just like Romeo and Juliet. Just like Romeo and Juliet. So that's a beautiful way that these couples met, physically, and then how they meet now. And these are all true experiences that are little stories and vignettes that are in the book.
And isn't it amazing with some of these stories how, like you said at the very beginning, they only met each other in a couple of weeks, or maybe less for some of them. They just met, and they knew that they were meant to be together, and they get married so quick. And I mean, do you think there's something special in that?
There is something special. And just as you say that, I kind of get the chills. It's kind of just that innocent love connection. I mean, many people have it and they don't follow it through, of course, and get married. But, some couples just have that connection at age 16, 17, and poof, that's it. They're going to get married. Then he goes off to war, or maybe he comes back from war and it doesn't work, and suicide happens, or a stateside accident happens. I mean, tragedies happen in our lives, as we know. And so these young, beautiful women and mothers, have to deal with the loss, that they face of losing their child, losing that love thread.
Well, absolutely. But I think that instant marriage can happen when people are a lot later on in life as well.
I hope so. I'm counting on that. How about you, Kevin?
I think so. I would probably have said never for myself, but after recent events, I'm thinking differently. I'm like, you know what? There might be something in this. And it shocks you when someone else does that towards you, because you're okay with doing it to them, but when they do it to you, it's like you question it. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But, it's kind of that heart connection, Sometimes we think things through, we analyze things through in our lives, and we're not really moving down into our hearts to make that heartfelt connection. And, when you're young, you're sort of open to love maybe, or your heart is more open. And so, these little connections happen. But it's so sad to me that, the lives are taken so quickly and suddenly, and they're so young.
Yes, and there are, as much as we can give answers to it for bigger picture reasons, it doesn't make it any easier, does it?
It doesn't make it easier, but you know what? What makes it easier, Kevin, and why these widows wanted to share their stories with me is that they still feel the connection. That song comes on the radio, or they smell the fragrance. It's like, the cologne that he wore. It's like right there in the room. Now tell me how that can happen, I had a radio host recently who said, well, they're just making that up. Aren't they just making that up? I'm like, well, maybe they are making it up. I mean, how do I know that they're not? Except that it feels so real. And when you hear it in the tone of their voice and just the knowingness they have, that, it feels so real.
And there was many more than the many chapters that you put in this book that have having the same experience even till today.
That's true, right? It might be a touch. It's very connected to the senses, our senses. We might hear, we might see, we might smell. The vibration of music, can bring you on, as we talked about. That sound can come through. I mean, what are the chances that you're standing on an elevator and one of these experiences and one of these widows shared with me, and we didn't put that in the book, but she was in a very exceptional speech that she had to do in Washington, D.C. in front of some very distinguished people, and her little daughter was going to be with her, and this is after he died. And she goes, what are the chances we're supposed to run back to the hotel and, we're supposed to be ready for this dress rehearsal when they told us we didn't have to have our, gowns on at this event, and we had to get our gowns on really quickly. And we're standing in the elevator and we're going up, and all of a sudden my daughter looks down and there's this penny that's sitting in the elevator, and she picks up the penny and she gives it to her mom, Dad. And she says, Dad is with us. Dad is with us. We're finding pennies everywhere when we need Dad. And there he was, kind of in the elevator. And she said, Maureen, it just gave me that sense and that awareness that, he was with us. He was there with us, that we didn't need to be stressed out about it. It's just beautiful. Or that song comes on, in the elevator too. That could happen. That was their song.
Yeah. It comes through music as well. That's so true. Well, let's share some stories that really stuck out to you. I'm a bit of a sucker for the 9/11 stories, obviously, but there's so many fantastic stories you've got in here. So please, if there's one that sticks out, that jumps out to you, to share.
I think I'm going to tell you about Nadia's story first, and then I can share a little bit about the experiences in 9/11. But Nadia is a Gold Star mother of Patrick McCaffrey, and she has a very big foundation for Patrick McCaffrey. She has become a spokesperson for veterans across the country in the United States and has created veterans villages where vets can come and rehab and learn a skill, after they come back from the war. But anyway, Nadia had this incredible vision. So Patrick, during 9/11 or after 9/11, he was working, I believe, as a mechanic, and he said to his mom that he was going to join the service. That was it. After 9/11, he wanted to make a difference in the world, so he decided to go. And his mom had a kind of a gut feeling, that this wasn't a good idea and that he might never come back, but she knew that he had to follow his heart. So he did go, and unfortunately, he did not come back. And he was killed during 9/11, killed over in Iraq, in this situation in Iraq. And it wasn't too long after he was killed that she had this waking dream kind of vision. Now, Patrick had 2 children in real life. Okay, he had 2 children. He had a son and he had a daughter. And in this waking dream, this mother sat up in bed and she saw her son. She saw Patrick standing there in his fatigues saying the following words, "My son." And she thought, okay, Patrick, what's the message? Maybe I need to call my grandson. Maybe he's talking about his son. So she calls her daughter-in-law and she asks about the son. He's fine. There's nothing wrong. So the next night she goes to bed. She has that same kind of waking vision. She said, Maureen, it's different than a dream. It was like he was right in the room, whispering right to her and said, "Mom, my son." And so this time she's freaking out and she decides to call the grandson herself and talk to the grandson. So she calls the grandson and he said, "Hey, Grandma, I'm fine. Everything's good. Nothing's wrong. Everything's okay." So then, Kevin, she has the dream a third time. And the same message comes through, "My son." And so by then she's really getting nervous about it. Well, it was that same day that she received a phone call. And on the other line of the phone call was a young teenager, and he was crying on the phone. He was just crying and crying. And she said, "Now calm down, and who are you?" And he said who his name was, and she still didn't recognize his name. And then he said, "My dad was Patrick McCaffrey." And so Nadia, the grandmother, said, "Well, who was your mother?" And the mother was someone who Patrick dated in high school. And when this love relationship broke up in high school, this gal just kind of disappeared and never really told Patrick why she left town. And of course, she left town because she was pregnant. But she had never told Patrick that she had this baby. She had never told him. And so Patrick comes from the other side to tell his mother about this baby that he had had. So anyway, this loving grandmother brings this boy to the family, introduces him to his half-brother and half-sister, says to me, "Maureen, he has all the characteristics of my son, Patrick. He even had ordered the same food at the restaurant. He looked like him. He had the same sporting teams that he loved. And they've continued this loving relationship." So here's a story where the other side comes to us. And if you pay attention to the message, you'll be ready.
Isn't that just so incredible? Yeah. Wow. Okay. That's a pretty powerful one. Yeah. You've got to be, obviously she was in a state that she was, she was okay to receive that message as well. It didn't scare her too much that when it came through, and she was able to really, trust in it as well.
That's true. She really trusted in that sense that this was real, Kevin. It wasn't like other dreams that she's had about Patrick. It was like he was right in the room. And when she describes it, she said it was really like a waking vision. He's standing right there. And of course, me as a mom, I think, oh my gosh, I'd want to hug my baby. I'd want to know that, he was okay. I would be probably grieving and upset, too upset to even get the message right, because he was right there. But her awareness was so deep in her meditation and her spirituality and her presence that she was able to receive that message, then be prepared for the real message that came through on the phone from this sweet young man who wanted to know more about his dad. And how beautiful.
Oh, beautiful, absolutely. And he wouldn't have made himself known if he thought it would scare her, I don't think. He's only made himself known because she's ready.
I think
She
so.
was ready.
I think so. So it's remarkable,
Okay.
how the message can come. And, you spoke about that before, how it can come through dreams. And, how do you distinguish that message from the dreams? Because even the widows say they have a lot of different dreams about their spouses, but there are certain dreams that feel like they're just right in the room. And it's those dreams that, they really pay attention to. So,
Yeah, it's almost
beautiful.
like a lucid dream, absolutely, yeah, where you're in charge of it, yeah. Okay, well, that's one fantastic story. I know you've got loads more, and we're only going to touch a few stories here, obviously, because of time, but yeah, that's thank you for sharing that first one.
Yeah, what? You said you were interested in a story about 9/11, and somebody did share this story with me about 9/11, and she asked me not to use her name in the story. But I'm going to read part of it and I'm going to tell part of it. But, New York was kind of just waking up again. And it was about 9 days after 9/11. And she said she could have this woman could have been in those towers. After high school, she went to work for a company by the name of Cantor Fitzgerald. It was a financial service firm that was located in the World Trade Center. And it was where the bombing, of course, took place and where she lost her friend who was working for this company. And she could have been working for the company, but she made a different choice. And so she knew many of the company members who were killed in that particular office on that particular day. But she had a really close friend named Vinny. And she knew him from childhood. She went through all school together since kindergarten. He grew up in the neighborhood. He was a football player. She was a cheerleader. Vinny was close to her family. They just remained pals, and they were pals over many, many years. And he stayed with the company, and then she finally resigned. And he was married only 2 months when his life was taken on that horrible day. And this was not his spouse. This was just a friend of his. And he was the youngest in that office to leave the world. And anyway, this young gal, she was returning from college and she was walking, and this was 9 days after in Manhattan. And I don't know if you've heard the stories about what it was like in Manhattan or if you were there at that time, but it was a really, really difficult time in Manhattan. You still saw, people on the sides, holding up signs. Have you seen this person? I mean, there's just a lot of grief and there's lots of pictures everywhere and posters everywhere. And she was walking along and there was quite a crowd on the sidewalk when she was walking. And she said, she was about to catch the train from her school during the noon hour. And the sun was really bright and the street was crowded. And the sun was just kind of shining on her face. And her dad was a fireman in the city on 9/11. So many people were holding those signs up. And she saw, fireman signs up everywhere as she walked. And, they just hadn't seen any signs of her friend Vinny, and she kept hoping that there would be some signs. And I believe somebody did find Vinny's watch, so that was a sign, but they never did find his body. So as she was, kind of walking along the street, and she wasn't even thinking specifically of Vinny on that day, all of a sudden she feels this arm slide around her back, and she kind of felt that arm pull her close to this entity or whatever it was. And of course, right away, she's on the street and she's looking side by side. Is somebody doing this to me? And she knew that it wasn't. She knew that it wasn't. And then she heard a little voice in her ear saying, "Hey, I'm fine. I'm just fine." And she said, it was his voice. It was clear. And she said, at that moment, she got this rush of a feeling and she just knew that everything was going to be okay. And then he said, "Take care of our friends. I love you." And, it was interesting. She said he appeared as if he was when she knew him. He was tall, he was good looking, he was muscular, he was in his late 20s, he had a mustache. She said we took about 7 steps together. And then afterwards, I just felt lighter because she had been kind of carrying this grief with her for quite some time. And she said, I just kind of said, "I love you too, and you'll be my friend forever." And she felt that it was really comforting and restful. No, that's kind of a woo-woo type of experience, but sometimes these experiences come through in a kind of woo-woo way where you actually sense them, actually feel them, standing next to you. And she did. And what a loving message it was for her because there was so much grief in that city at that time. that it was
Oh,
really, really
I can't
difficult.
imagine. I can't imagine how much. As you say, yes, to some it may be classed as a woo-woo experience, but it was the right experience for her, because had any other type of experience occurred, it may have not have got the message across as that did.
Right. There was something, in that sense of comfort for her. There was just a comfort. And when she could actually hear his voice clearly whisper in her ear, I'm fine, I'm fine, that was the knowingness that she knew he was fine. I don't know, Kevin, if you've had any woo woo experiences like this in your life, but I had one in my life. And that kind of made me a believer a little bit in some of this work. I was on my way to a funeral at the university where someone had died very suddenly and tragically. And I live on the Commencement Bay here in Tacoma, Washington. And I lived on the water at that time. And I thought, well, maybe I should drive along the water and it'll make me feel good as I drive to the university to sit at this funeral. And then I thought, no, maybe I shouldn't drive along the water because it's a beautiful day and a lot of people will be distracted, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, of course, I drove along the water. And as I was driving along the water, there was a group of GIs that were running along the waterfront. And in the vehicle in front of me was an SUV. And that SUV had a group of young gals in it. And there was a moment I thought, oh, I hope they're not distracted by those fellows that are running. And at that second, they slammed their brakes on. And I heard my dad's voice say very clearly, pump your brakes, pump your brakes. Now, that's something, we would used to have when we had different brake systems in our cars. My dad got a new car every 2 years. He was a salesman. And, of course, there was a slight impact because this gal in front of me slammed her brakes on quickly to check these fellows out. And it was just a slight impact, and it wasn't much damage to our cars. And I pulled over to the side, of course, to get the license, but that's not what I was thinking about. What I was thinking about is my dad was in the car, and he was saying, he was protecting me, saying, hey, pump your brakes. And hearing that voice so clearly, I knew it was my dad. It wasn't like I was making it up, Just interesting how the message can come.
Yeah, and it's not something you forget easy, an experience like that.
No, I absolutely didn't. And I was kind of a believer after that. So when this young gal told me the story that she heard Vinny's voice whisper in her ear, and she wasn't expecting it. I mean, there's still dust, there's still ash everywhere, there's smoke, from those buildings. And she's walking along, and the sun is penetrating in, and then all of a sudden, she feels this arm slide right next to her. I mean, she was shaking on the phone. I mean, I could hear her voice shaking when she told me the story.
That emotion carries the real truth as well.
Mm-hmm. And that vibration, comes through that way in the emotion. And sometimes I believe our grief is very thick. Our grief is thick here, and I think the grief is thick there. And maybe the veil is sometimes difficult to come through, for the message to come through. Why some people receive the message, maybe other people don't. And maybe it's because of that veil. I don't have that answer, but maybe.
Well, there is always that thing where, how long would our loved ones want us to grieve for? I'm sure there's a period of grief that has to happen. Of course there is, but I'm sure there's such a period where they would like us to start going through recovery in a sense from the loss, and not live in that pain forever, because they would love us enough that they'd want us to move on.
Exactly. And what we just have to understand, and this is what I believe, is that they're still with us. It's not like it's this big separation, but there's this energy or this vibration that can still be with us. And yes, they want us to continue. They don't want us to be in grief. They don't want us to hold it back. But, there's so many unresolved situations and peoples and relationships in their lives that sometimes, it takes a long time to resolve our grief. Or it happens so quickly, it's just taken in a flash, in a moment.
Oh, yeah. And I suppose there's also the other aspect of this as well. It's also those that have passed on may not still want to leave the people that mean so much to them, especially if there's children involved. They may not want to leave their children behind as well at such a young age.
That's so true. That's really true. And, the other thing about these experiences, and I don't know if you've ever thought about this, Kevin, but it's sort of a little philosophy I've been jumping around with some other people. And, many times they come back to us and they look very young, their faces are clear. There's just a good vibration of how they feel and how you sense about them. It's not how they left this world necessarily with disease or with wounds. And I believe that maybe this vibration over there is much faster, kind of like the vibration of children, where it's faster, it moves quicker. And that's maybe how they can penetrate or come through or be in that loving place when they come through, that you don't see that, you don't sense that. The horror that they had to go through when they were here, perhaps.
Yes, and I hear that again and again, that the looks of people are at their prime, and they probably choose those looks because they are happier with them, or it's their best them at the time that they feel that they were the best people at that time. Maybe, I don't know, or maybe it's just a particular set of clothes that they wanted to show them, without showing them the person that they were when they left, just so that it still puts them on edge. Well, is it really them? Why are they coming through like that? Where's my truth? Is it a definitive truth, or am I still gonna, trust that this is them?
Right. Closed for the spirit. Maybe that's what that means. Who knows?
Who knows? Well, that's it. Who knows? Like I always say, and like someone said to me, if spirit wanted to come down here to give messages, they could come down here and manifest into the physical potentially. They don't, because there's free will, and all this journey, it takes away the free will aspect.
Very good. There's so much free will here, and
yeah.
If you have the answers, then you don't know. If the more you know, the more you don't know.
Exactly. Even if you had the answers, maybe the truth is so expansive that there is not one truth, there is many truths. All truths lead to the same path, but yet there is no definitive truth. Even once you've crossed over, there may be not a definitive truth.
But I would say that the one truth, I think, is love. And I think that love connection never dies. That love is eternal. So I believe that is one truth that might be connected here for us on the other side and here. Kevin, I can't thank you enough for speaking about my book today, Baby It's You, Messages from Deceased Heroes, and my first book, which was called Live from the Other Side. They're both available through Ozark Mountain Publishing, but they're also on Amazon. They're on Kindle, Baby It's You, Messages from Deceased Heroes. I'm going to be speaking at the Ozark Mountain Transformational Conference that's coming up here in April, which is a fantastic conference started by Dolores Cannon, who passed away last year, and she was the publisher. Many people know her work in transgression therapies and UFOs and all kinds of work that she did in her life.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, those books have been coming up on the screen as well, and so has your website. We've got a few more minutes yet. We're okay for time just right now. I would just want to say one thing that you said as well. As by the way, it's a pleasure to have you on as well. One thing I want to say, there is actually a truth, like as you say, and the one truth that seems to come through all different types of teaching, no matter how different the teachings are. There are the core principles: oneness and love. Love seems to be the main issue, the main answer to all our issues, and the main thing that we're here to relearn. So yes, I agree with you there totally.
Yeah, love is eternal,
Absolutely. In your stories, did you ever come across any that became, with a loss of a child as well?
Yes, there's one story in the book. It didn't happen in the military, but it happened. A soldier came back from the war, and he had been estranged from his daughter. She had a very different disease, anyway, he had been estranged from her, and he tried to communicate with her, but he couldn't. And one day he was in his house with his son, and his son was in one room, his bedroom, and he was in the office room, and there was like a landing in between. And they both heard her voice call for Dad, Dad, and they both ran into the center. And then my friend Vito found out that she had actually passed on that day. But he had, unfortunately, he had not had that opportunity to say goodbye to her, but she had come through from the other side to say goodbye to him. So he was deeply moved, wanted to tell me that story. And as a veteran of the war, he was just so open to sharing that message with me. So it was quite beautiful.
Oh, they're never easy, are they, when it involves kids as well? I don't think it's easy involving anyone, but the kids one, I suppose, it's raw, isn't it? Because we expect to outlive our kids, don't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, do you think, with all the cases that you've dealt with as well, that then there must be some sort of life plan where we do have an exit point?
I guess so. It's like there must be a plan there, maybe a divine plan that connects us to the path that we're supposed to be on here and the journey we're supposed to be on here. Of course, 80% of the world's religions believe, I think more than that, of reincarnation. So maybe there is a life path for us to learn these lessons each time.
And do you think that the majority of the relatives who have lost someone could potentially look at those who have passed as their greatest teachers?
Absolutely. And I believe grief can be the greatest teacher that there is.
It takes to get to a specific recovery to get to that point, doesn't it? That there's no destiny to get to that point. But I suppose if you do, it can help heal you even more, maybe, to look at it from that perspective, if you're ready for it.
Right. The question is if you're ready for it,
Nothing forced in that sense. And you know what? If you're not ready for it in that life to look at it that way, and it makes you angry to look at it that way, don't look at it that way. Come up with your own truth.
Right.
Of what you think it may be.
I do want to put one plug in for the fellow who wrote the foreword for my book, Reverend Bill McDonald.
Sure.
He's a Vietnam vet. He's the founder of the Military Writers Society of America. He's got a beautiful book out about his spiritual path.
Okay, so the title's called?
Warrior, A Spiritual Odyssey by Reverend Bill McDonald, Vietnam veteran, founder of the Military Writers Society of America.
Okay, well, that's gone up on the screen right now, so thank you for sharing that with us. I do appreciate that. Yes, so he helped in the forwarding, right, perfect. Because you offer the tarot service as well. That's one of the services that you offer on as a over Skype, I'm guessing, and over the phone as well.
Yes, I do it over Skype. I do it over the phone. I do it in person here in the Great Northwest. And people can connect to me at messagesfromheroes@gmail.com. Messagesfromheroes@gmail.com.
I would like to ask you. Sorry, I'd like to ask you this as well, just before we go. What would you say? Because thank you for sharing these wonderful messages as well in the book. Absolutely fantastic, and I know there's so many beautiful stories in there. For anyone that's lost anyone, what would you say then is the most important message of your book?
I think the most important message is to pay attention to the love messages that come through, and that love truly is eternal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Maureen, I'd just like to say thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a complete pleasure.
Thank you, Kevin, for that opportunity. I'm glad it worked out.
Well, we've come to an end on tonight's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on the More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests on the show via themoreshow.co.uk, and do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. So until next time, be safe.